than my good buddy Oisín Harrington, who's come all the way from County Kildare to talk to us. Oisín, welcome to Dublin City FM. Welcome to CouncilMatters.
Hi, Mick. Thanks very much for having us on.
Oisín, the reason why we're one of the reasons why we're having you in here today, My Lovely Horse, because you are associated with an equine charity, is the way I would call it, called My Lovely Horse Rescue. But before we talk about that and what it involves and how people can help, just tell us a little bit about yourself, because whenever I see any images, there you are looking proud in the saddle, riding away. What's your involvement with equestrianism and how long does it go back?
Oh, it goes right back to probably when I was 4 years old, and my mother was working around the house, and there was a silence which knew there must have been trouble. Yeah. So she went outside to the field, and lo and behold, I was there sitting up on the back of her wild chestnut mare, who was a show jumper, while she was basking in the sun. So she, in her panic, she screamed at me, and to get down off the mare, and the mare got up and bolted and did a flat-out gallop around the field with me hanging on for dear life. And so I haven't looked back since, but it's a long time since I was actually competing or doing anything like that. But I suppose going back to, we used to rent a bit of space in the yard for my mother's horses, and eventually I got a pony, but from a very young age I was feeding other people's horses, throwing them in sections of hay over the door and looking after them where they were underfed and malnourished.
Yes, it's quite a different world in the city, I can assure you. Very few, but so you obviously come from an equestrian background. Your mother, you say, was a show jumper. Was what was she doing, gymkhanas, or was she at the professional level?
So she bred a couple of horses herself. She was a reasonably accomplished rider herself, and she bred a few, and some of them were picked up. One was ridden by Paul Dara for a while, that particular one I described to you, and she was ridden by another Australian lady called Sue Cash professionally. She would have competed at a high level on her, and we would have always had them at home and bred them. And my father is also a practicing equine vet, still practicing at the age of 76.
That's pretty impressive, isn't it?
Yeah.
So would you always have been in the horse, as we say, in the horse world, or would you have perhaps been in the agriculture, the wider agricultural world as well?
Very much in the horse world.
With the father as a vet.
Yes, yeah. So I would have gone out on calls with him from the time I could walk around and pick things up, and helped him out wherever I could as I got older, and would have kept them at home, broken them, ridden them, sold them on, that type of thing.
Yeah, you're a very tall gentleman. You're taller than me, and I'm 6 foot tall. Would you have been a rider yourself, or did that handicap you to a certain degree?
No, in fact, I even rode racehorses for a while. I got my amateur license. I didn't ride in any races in the end, but because there was a conflict with my university days at the time. But I show jumped to a reasonably high level, up to grade C on a few horses. I would have done eventing then when I was younger, sort of under 21s, and competed at a reasonably high level at that, a little bit of dressage, and would have ridden regularly in the Dublin Horse Show and that type of thing.
You've ruined me there now, Oisín, because what I was going to say, I bet you spent most of your summer holidays at the Horse Show.
I did, usually in a pair of jodhpurs.
Yeah. Come back tomorrow because we've got fetish day.
Oh dear.
And riding crops and everything like that.
Well, I'm sure I could lend you some equipment.
We'll hold that thought. So tell me, is it like Jilly Cooper talks about?
Well, I mean, it's got its ups and downs. Excuse the pun, but it's an interesting world because horses are really a luxury for people. If you look at the top end of the flat racing business,
yes,
they're rich people's playthings.
Absolutely, yeah.
And and they do. There is a lot of care taken within the industry to ensure that these animals are minded correctly. I mean, if you bear in mind on the flat racing end of things, they go to the track as 2-year-olds, they're babies,
Yeah.
and they're still developing. And, we put a person up on them and expect them to run like heck down a track. Yeah. So, anybody in the horse world who works and operates in the horse world at that level, whether it be racing, show jumping, dressage, eventing, the real professionals and the people who are serious about it really, really, really do have a keen eye to horse welfare. Because one thing for sure, Mick, is that if you've got an animal that's underperforming and it won't go or it refuses to jump its fences, the most likely reason for that is that it's hurting. So you have to look after them properly and make sure that they're not hurting, that they're nourished correctly, that they've got the right amount of free exercise and movement and shelter.
Perhaps you could explain something to me, because particularly in show jumping, as opposed to even steeplechase or flat racing, where there's a certain amount of money, it seems to me that there's not an awful lot of prize money in show jumping. There might be a lot of prestige, but there's not an awful lot of prize money. However, the horses are very expensive. How do these two reconcile themselves, or is this people with a lot of disposable income?
Well, this is it. It goes back to rich people's playthings.
Yes.
If you look at the show jumping world, I mean, the prize money I think at the RDS this year topped $1 million.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, how much would should we say the main event? What would the prize money with that would probably be? Would it be 20 grand even?
Yeah, it would be, and more,
Okay, yeah.
The Aga Khan Cup is as much about prestige, and it depends who's sponsoring these events as well. I know, I don't know who's sponsoring it these days, and
Sure.
I'm not as in touch as I would have been
Probably
years
not
ago.
the Aga Khan himself anymore.
Probably not the Aga Khan himself anymore, but possibly. I'm not sure if it's still called the Aga Khan Cup or not.
Yeah.
But I know Volvo have been great sponsors over the years, and there have been various other sponsors who've come in and sponsored these worldwide circuit events. So one leg of which would be at the Dublin Horse Show, and then they'd have them at various other locations around the world.
Sure, and of course we've got, when one looks at equestrian, we've mentioned the flat, we've mentioned the steeplechase and hurdles. We've also mentioned the show jumping, but you've also got other areas as well, whether it be hunting. There is a whole world out there that non-equestrian people would not tend to appreciate, as to, shall we say, the diversity of horse world.
Absolutely, I suppose it ties in many ways with country pursuits. Typically is what we would know it as, hunting, possibly even polo as well.
That's a yes. I forgot to mention polo, because that used to be very. It was very popular up in the Phoenix Park at one stage.
That's
Is
right.
it still
up in
there?
McKee Barracks, the Irish Polo Club would have been up there, and I would have had a lot of my misspent youth hanging around up
Were you
there.
a polo player?
I wasn't. No, I was never any good at no hand-eye coordination.
Yeah.
So it was the one equestrian sport that I was not able to do. But I've pretty much done every other one you could think of.
Yeah. We've got to ask you this: is Prince Charles any good?
At polo.
Yeah.
That's a very good question. I wouldn't be able to answer that
And
one
his
now.
dad. I was always brought up that the greats were always Argentinian, and they tended to run away with people's wives as well.
That's absolutely. Well, I can't speak for the latter, but certainly the former.
Yeah.
And one of the issues I remember, my father was vet for the Irish Polo Club, and so you would have seen a lot of polo players, and the really good ones, the Argentinian guys would have come over here quite a lot. But then you have unskilled people going out, and they have this thing called the millionaire's shot, where you hit the ball between the horse's galloping legs, and somebody with real skill can actually hit the ball as the stride is going out, and it goes between their legs. But then oftentimes, you'd have some guy who's got a big ego and not much skill, and he hits the horse's legs, and
Yeah, well, I'll come to that one, because again, when I was in Australia, there was a gentleman that was as much notorious as he was well known, and that was a man called Kerry Packer. And Kerry decided that in the late 80s and mid 80s that he'd made all this money, and he was a little bit ooh and a little bit and somehow or other he decided that he needed to become respectable, because he was a bit of a gangster. And he bought into polo for some bizarre reason, and he was as rough as guts. Even though he was a billionaire, he was rough as guts, and thrived on his reputation for being rough as guts. Do you get many of those parvenus coming in, or is the entry level of the investment an inhibit? To say nothing of the social, shall we say, parameters.
I mean, if you've ever read anything by Alan de Botton. He's got a great book called Status Anxiety, and you know, it really ties in with all this, you know, and it's about the gentrification of the of people and what they aspire to, and yeah, of course you see this, and I would have seen it many times out in the hunting field, and you know, even as a kid, given out to adults for
well, I think because you come from Kildare and the part of Kildare you come from, we would be very remiss if we didn't mention perhaps Ireland's shall we say most challenging investor in the particularly in the show jumping area was a man called John Gilligan.
Oh yes, yeah.
He had a Jasper, wasn't it? He had a place.
Indeed. Yeah, you're quite near where I'm from, actually.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. I mean, how was that investment seen in the polo circles? Was it oh, well, he's got money, we won't ask where it came from, or was it that little upstart? You know.
You know, I think that. You know, generally in the horse world, if somebody is looking after their animals well and they care for them, and you know they're not abusive to them, the horse world is pretty welcoming. And you know, much like what we do in My Lovely Horse Rescue, it's a lot of the time when, you know, people come into the sport late, or they, you know, whether it's hunting or jumping or whatever it might be, the horse community around them want to help them become better, so that, you know, they don't neglect them, they don't abuse them, because a lot of the time it's just out of ignorance, you know. And so really education is the key, whether it's a multi-billionaire or millionaire coming into a sport, or whether it's somebody keeping a horse in an urban area in Dublin where possibly it shouldn't be kept.
Sure, yeah. Let's talk about that then, Oisín, because My Lovely Horse, it's a nice pun because everybody remembers the piece we played from Father Ted and so on and so forth. Is it largely focused on what we would call the amateur end of it, in the sense the private owners, or who perhaps get to a certain point, they can't afford the medical bills, or do you also address within the professional equestrian area as well?
So My Lovely Horse Rescue specifically focuses on urban areas in Dublin where horses and ponies and donkeys are being kept in inappropriately, where there's neglect and abuse taking place, and also in certain areas of Kildare and Meath where they would be, you know, in many cases, most cases probably amateurs keeping them, and you know, possibly in unsuitable circumstances.
Sure, yeah. Do you get calls? I mean, how do you actually get to know that there's an animal that is in a dare I say it, in a traumatized condition, whether it be from lack of medical attention, or whether it be lack of proper feeding, or lack of proper stabling even? How do you get to find out about these cases?
Well, you know, typically, I suppose, if I can sort of flip that on its head slightly, and talk about how, if I were a member of the public, I might go about reporting neglect, or identifying and reporting neglect and abuse. The first step is really to get onto the DSPCA.
Okay.
Now, one of the challenges with the DSPCA is that they're 9 to 5.
Yeah. Okay.
So, you know, people are working, they're on their way home from work, they're driving along, and they see either a situation in a field, or a horse or a donkey tied up in an inappropriate area, or maybe where it looks injured or something like that. Typically they would go to the DSPCA first. If they have no luck there, it's outside of business hours, or it's the weekend, when often these are observed. It would be the Department of Agriculture Cruelty Helpline, or the council, but typically on evenings and weekends they get no response.
Sure, yeah.
So that's where we come in.
Who has responsibility then? Is it at council level? Is it at national government level? Or is it at some agency level?
Well, I mean, let's start with the people who keep these animals. Let's start with you know, how these animals are being kept and who's keeping them. The responsibility ultimately starts there.
Of course, yes.
In the same way as if you or I have children.
Yes.
You know, if we breed ourselves, well then we have as we would say, if you're a director of a business, you have a fiduciary responsibility to look after that child. Well, it's the same if you buy a dog or a horse or any kind of animal, any kind of sentient being, and you bring it into your home or your surroundings, and you decide to take it upon you to keep that animal. Well, then there's a responsibility first and foremost on that individual and those individuals to take care of the welfare of that horse.
Yes, but if they all did it properly, you wouldn't you wouldn't have a need for what you do, guys.
Well, absolutely.
Well, some of the things
absolutely.
you do. Yes.
And I suppose then, if we're to tie it into government responsibility, there was legislation passed back in 96, 97, and then again in 2013 by Simon Coveney and there's, I suppose some legal experts and consultants, which helps to assign responsibility to these various owners and these people keeping these animals. Outside of that, then, I'm not 100% sure where the demarcation comes with in terms of the council, but certainly the Gardaí's powers have been broadened since the legislation was brought in 2013, and they can do quite a lot.
But I presume they would then have to go and get some sort of authorization, or is there some? Again, I'm purely quizzing you here, Eugene. I don't want to get Oisín. I don't want to get carried away with the legalese of it. But we say, for instance, I'm going home this afternoon and I see a horse being abused in Clontarf. You're saying I should be ringing the DSPCA?
Yes, well, typically that's what would happen. Then the Gardaí could possibly be brought in, and then the pound. The pound is are private contractors. They're paid by the council, so it's taxpayers' money, and they get €900 for every horse they dispose of, shall we say. Yeah. So for every horse that they shoot.
Basically,
So we would typically pick them up in the pound. We would, we would often be called in situations where it's outside of the DSPCA or the Department of Agriculture's cruelty helpline hours. We would get called in. We cannot seize. We do not have the power to seize animals. We like to help and educate in the various communities around Dublin and outside. We also then would, if we are involved in a particular animal case, we would then often try to take them. If we can rehome them from the pound, that's what we'll do.
Okay.
Alternatively, they're surrendered to us by people who can no longer care for them.
And how bad of a condition? I mean, we had a dreadful case where about 2 months ago, where the horse was found dead or in a very, very bad condition. I think it was out in Belcamp, where somebody decided that they would do a homemade job of putting the horse down and beat the bejesus out of it with a shovel, and by all accounts that the horse was in a very distressed state, if not dead, very, very close to it. Situations like that, how typical are they? Or is it mainly neglect?
It's a mixture, Mick, to be honest. I mean, if you start at the top and let's look at the numbers, I suppose 2 years ago, the most up-to-date numbers would have been that there are about 40,000 unwanted equines in Ireland.
Oh. Yeah.
So start with that. So if you assume that number is even half correct, then there are only 20,000. So where are they all? So they're thrown out on vast tracts of land, which may be tied up in NAMA, or which may be, for one reason or another, maybe development stopped since the Celtic Tiger days. And there are vast tracts of land where these animals are just let out pretty much wild. Yeah. They're allowed to breed. They're allowed to, they don't get cared for. Their teeth continually grow, so they need to be rasped on a regular basis. Their feet continually grow, so they need to be tended to on a regular basis. They need quite a lot of care.
Okay.
So they, if you can't just release them out into the wild like that and expect that you're not going to have disasters. So that's one end of it. When they're out on these tracts of land, then there could be sharp bits of metal, there could be bits of wire that they get their feet caught in. Often the case is that in the more urban areas where children are buying them for a fiver, or swapping a packet of cigarettes for a horse and a donkey. Yeah,
or as the song said, a bag of yolks.
A bag of yolks, exactly. And it's all very well and good to sort of to laugh these things off, but actually when you have to go out and get your hands dirty and rescue these animals, it's no laughing matter, and it's incredibly distressing. Now, you know, I don't do a huge amount of it personally. I have done over the years, but I was working abroad most of last year, and you know, I've been busy over the last few months, so I'm just getting myself settled again. But you know, I really admire the people in particular who are doing this on a day in, day out basis.
Can I ask you then, where are the black spots in Dublin?
So the black spots in Dublin are, you know, they're areas where typically you would, and now I can list them out for you, and I'm not listing them in any particular order, but, you know, Tala, Ballyfermot, Clondalkin, Darndale, Dublin city centre, and then areas of Kildare and Meath as well.
Not Finglas, I'm interested to see.
Well, not possibly. You know, there are other areas, you know, where we do find it, but you know, these are the areas where, you know, there have been efforts in the past by, you know, Clondalkin have their equestrian centre out there. We work closely with those guys now. We like to work with the communities because we do have to accept first and foremost that a lot of this abuse and neglect is due to ignorance.
Yeah, if I just look through this here, Tallaght and Dundalkin, they both come under South Dublin County Council. How active are South Dublin County Council in actually addressing the issue, or is this just happens to be the geographic area that these rescues are? Do you have much involvement with the councils, I suppose?
To a degree, I mean, I think, you know, we would really like to have more, you know, and where it could really be effective is working at a community level, you know, and this ties in with education. This ties in, you know, and that's first and foremost. So, you know, if we look at the big picture again, you know, and I don't want to single out particular areas in Dublin, and I don't think it's fair. I do think that there are particular areas in Dublin where not only is there abuse from ignorance and neglect, I think there's also, is there not only abuse and neglect through ignorance, but I do think there's a certain malevolence that goes with a lot of that as well. And this is something that's often not spoken about.
Okay. Tell us about the Adopt a Horse scheme.
Adopt a Horse is where My Lovely Horse Rescue would rescue an animal, and we've rescued well over 200 in the last 3 years, where we would rescue an animal, bring it back to health, and bring it back to then trusting people, possibly riding, where, you know, we would train it properly to ride well, so that a child or something can actually adopt this pony and bring it home and use it and bring it and let it have a useful life.
Okay. The other bit as well then, you've got an event coming up that a lot of young people will be attending, and hopefully they will see you there and they will think, we heard that guy on Dublin City FM and he sounded good and he sounded a very honourable man. Electric Picnic, tell us, what's your involvement there and how can people help there?
Well, this is the fun part. You know, one of the big things we have to do is continually strive to raise awareness and obviously much needed funds. These animals are not cheap to look after.
I would have thought so, yes.
So for the last 3 years, the guys at the Electric Picnic have been absolutely fantastic to us. And the reason for that is because of our patrons, Neil Hannon, and one of our heads of the charity, who is Kathy Davey. And there's a really strong tie in there with all the guys there. And we have My Lovely Ranch at the Electric Picnic. And it's a fantastic place, and it's grown and grown over the years. It's down around the trailer park area. And what you'll usually find is all the people hungover in the morning will come in, have a cup of tea, nurse their hangover and pet a dog or a horse or a pony or a donkey and soothe themselves to get back into the revelry for the rest of the day and the evening.
So will you be there for the whole weekend?
We'll have My Lovely Ranch there. Kathy is launching her new album at the event.
Oh, well done.
And we have a wonderful competition running at the moment called a Rubbish Song for Europe contest. And effectively we're looking for people to come out, submit a song with a music video to accompany it, and the 15 finalists will be on the stage at My Lovely Ranch in a sing-off, dance-off, whatever it's going to be at the Rubbish Song contest for Europe at the My Lovely Ranch, the Electric Picnic.
Oisín, we've barely scraped the surface on some of the good stuff you do. I think we're going to have to get you back in. We're going to have to get people who are actively participating in the charity. But for the moment, you got a website, do you?
We do. Our website is mylovelyhorserescue.com. On the website you can get a full outline of all the activities. You can see where you can adopt a horse or a pony or foster a horse or pony. All our fundraising events are there. We regularly do pub quizzes and so on and so forth. You'll see us on Grafton Street shaking buckets every weekend. And so please visit our website, and if you feel you can help in any way, we'd love to hear from you.
Well, as I say, Oisín, we'll have to get you back in because you've just whetted our appetite for animal rescue. You keep up the good work. You're doing such tremendous work out there, and without you, there'd be some dreadful suffering that animals would be subjected to. So, Oisín Harrington, thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much.